We're here today to talk about breath support because, as you all know, breath support is one of the most important ingredients in singing, and one of the most curious and most confused ones that I think people talk about when it comes to voice training. So we wanted to clarify some of these strange metaphors that seem to be bouncing around and give you just real answers based on scientific fact, and to show you some exercises and some tools that are completely foolproof so that you can feel for yourself what breath support feels like. And you don't have to take our word for it because you're going to know what it is for you. So, I am so thrilled to introduce my really good friend, Phil. Phil, would you like to tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Yes, my name is Phil, and I am a certified personal trainer with a corrective exercise specialty. So a lot of what I do is I help people optimize their posture. And posture is critical to all movement, including singing. I also am a USA registered weightlifting coach. So I do a lot in the sport of Olympic weightlifting. And I've worked extensively with the practices of DNS, or dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, which is kind of what we're going to be using a little bit here, is introducing and learning what it means to stabilize your trunk, which will ultimately give you the support that your breath needs. So we've got a lot that we're going to go through today. We're going to go through even more in a few weeks. So we hope you guys can join us. I'm excited, and I look forward to taking you through some of these basic exercises, right? Some of these are really basic. So it's important that we do them well and that you learn to feel what it means to support not only your own breath, but your own body while doing what you guys do. So I'm looking forward to it, and I can't wait to get started.
Thanks, Phil. So, a little bit more about Phil from me. We have been friends for a while, and during the pandemic, when all of us kind of got really bored because there was nothing to do, I ended up going to Phil just for, some like basic human muscular training. And somewhere along the way, I thought, maybe I should ask this guy the questions that I've been asking all of these world-renowned experts and teachers and coaches about breath support that nobody's been able to answer for me for 10 years. Because I don't know, maybe he'll know. What do I have to lose at this point? Because I've already spent so many years and so much money, and all I get are these weird, like, going to the bathroom metaphors, and that's just disgusting. So I'm gonna ask this guy and see what he thinks. And turns out he had every single answer. And after a complete fascination between the two of us of this whole breath support thing and how it applies to this sport and what it really means apart from all of this flowery language, we became obsessed over this for about a year. And, a couple, maybe 6 months ago, we started to talk about, we have learned so much together in this process. And, I really think that this is something that so many other people are looking for too. And I would just really love to share this with everybody and to give people a real sense of understanding and control and awareness of what their body should be doing, like I got it. And so that's why we're here. So with all of that aside, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, give me 1 second. All right. So, here we are, Breath Support Summit. What we're going to talk to you about today, and what our goals for this short session and also for the entire weekend-long summit that we're going to be offering, is we want to bust some of these ridiculous myths about breath support and learn real facts. And we want to discover body awareness, that is, what it feels like to have breath support, not to just interpret someone else's words, but to actually feel it for yourself. And then to take that feeling and to develop a conscious control to be able to turn it on and off at will, because that's what we need as professional singers, right? We can't just go out there and hope that it works. We have to be able to deliver, and we want to teach that to you. And the very last thing is we have to obviously apply all of these body awarenesses to singing. So not only are we going to be doing some just basic body work, but then we're going to add that on by doing some singing skills and drills and vocalises so that you get a really nice marriage between all of these concepts. So let's start with just the basic universal stuff here, right? We all know that we need to inhale and expand the ribs, and then we're going to maintain that rib expansion, and then we, quote unquote, create support. And it's this number 3 that just where everything gets lost, right? Create support, just do it. Okay, well, how do I do it, right? Well, let's go back a little bit, and I just want to talk about what your definition of breath support is. Because if we're going to go through how to do it, it's important to figure out what the heck we should be doing and why we should be doing it, right? So some common ones are, to support the tone, to create freedom in the mechanism. Some people are like, I don't know, my teacher just tells me to do it and that I need it, but I don't know why, right?
And I hope for the best, right?
So, if you would like, you can throw in the chat real quick what your definition of breath support is. But we're going to be talking today about what support means outside of singing and outside of breath. Let's start there. Let's decompress some of these words that we just hear over and over and over and over again, and so therefore they have no meaning to us, right? So let's start with what support means in the structural world, right? So here we have some little kids on the swings, and what is providing the support for this movement? It's the poles that the swings are attached to, right? They are cemented into the ground, and so therefore they do not move, and everything moves around it. So in this case, support could also mean stability or a solid foundation, or security or control, any of these things, right? This is what commonly shows up for us. Let's make it a little bit more interesting here. What is providing the support in this picture? Well, there's actually 2. The first one is the pole, which you see giving a little bit, right? So it's not static, it is changing, but it's also being supported by the ground. So support can come from lots of different ways, and in many cases, we need it coming from lots of different ways, depending on what action or what motion we're trying to do. But it's not always the ground, and it's not always gravity. Here's another great example. A swimmer, right? Yes, they're using gravity, but it's that viscosity of the water that's providing the support for their body. And that's kind of what's happening in singing, is that the air is part of what is being supported and also supporting the tone, right? So just something to keep in mind. We're going to try and use all of these different terms interchangeably so that you don't just hear breath support, breath support, breath support over and over again, because I want to develop this sort of living and flowing use of more physics terms as we go through this. So supporting the tone, that's sort of like the overall most common definition of what we singers mean when we talk about breath support, supporting the tone, right? So let's go a little further with that. So if we support, what's supporting is the body engagement in order to create a steady tone or a beautiful tone or a free tone, right? And if we go even further with that, We're doing body engagement to create a steady air flow. And we go into this more in our summit, and we don't want to spend a lot of time on it today about the mechanics, but the juice of it is that we're wind instruments, right? And so we need to be able to control what type of air and how fast and how much we are releasing from the body. And that doesn't happen at the larynx, it happens here. It happens below, inside the abdominal cylinder and the thoracic cylinder. And so by the time the air gets to our larynx, it's already created. And so we have to find a good recipe for whatever action or motion or tone we want as singers in the body first. So that's what we're going to show you today. So let's go back to this little guy here. If we want steady, consistent air, we need to pressurize it. So how are we going to pressurize this air? Yes, inhale, expand the ribs, maintain that expansion, and create support. But most of us talk about creating support this way, in an upwards throwing up motion. Wrong, right? Or you hear people talk about support in a lower downwards motion, and they have a lot of really gross analogies that we're not going to go into, right? Wrong, 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 right? What we're really talking about, what is actually physically, as in physics, going on in your body is this. Pressure in 360 degrees, because this is going into all of these little soft spots in your belly, right? For lack of precise terms, right? So this is happening in 360 degree motion or pressure. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to call this the abdominal cylinder, because that's more or less the basic shape that this takes literally inside of our body. So you're probably thinking, okay, we can call it the abdominal cylinder, but like, what is it really? Well, let's talk about the specific muscles involved. Here are just some of them. And if you think, wow, that's really overwhelming, good, because it doesn't matter. Because the cool thing about this is that in order to create internal stability, in order to create a pressurized system, in our case, pressurized air, all of these muscles have to work together as a unit. So if you want to go learn all of their names, that is just great, but it doesn't matter because they function together as one. And in fact, it's neurologically impossible to isolate one of these muscles or to do one motion in the muscle group and not another while being pressurized. It's not possible. So the only thing that we have to focus on is, are we firing them all? Or are we not? So here we go. We're going to do it. Phil is going to walk us through our very first exercise. I'll be doing it with you. So feel free to raise your hand for help or to throw something in the chat if you feel a little bit lost, but we're just going to jump right into it. So Phil, take it away.
We're going to jump right into it. Like I said before, everyone, these exercises are very basic, right? And they're basic for a reason. We need to be able to execute these well. If we start with complex movements, it's very hard to execute. It's very hard to, like Jess was saying earlier, to feel what's happening, right? When we can feel the muscles engage and work together as a unit to stabilize and pressurize the trunk, when we feel it, that's when the motor learning happens, right? We can sit here and talk about it. We can understand theory, but motor learning has that other component of actually being able to feel what's happening internally in your body. So we're going to go over these. They're going to seem really basic. So it's important that if you guys don't feel what we're talking about, let us know so that we can make adjustments if we need to, okay? Simple. Basic, high quality movements that will force your body to pressurize that abdominal cylinder. That's what we want to do here, okay? We're just going to turn it on, feel it, and then as we get more familiar with that, we can start to initiate it on our own, right? Without the need for certain positions and the floor and gravity and all those things. But right now, we're going to use gravity. We're going to use the floor as a way to give us some feedback so that we can make sure that we're hitting these points of performance, okay? So let's start. Basics. We're going to be on the floor, supine. Make sure I'm at the right distance here that you guys can see me. Supine means we're laying on our back, okay? Now, it's important here, everyone, that if you can't keep a neutral neck, meaning your chin tucked and the back of your neck is long, then if you have to lay on the floor and your chin is up like this, this is not a good airway. So get yourself a headrest if you need it, okay? If you need to have a headrest in order to keep that neutral neck position, then that's perfectly okay, all right? So we're starting here. This is what's called we've named this or coined this the heel peel, okay? And it's just like it sounds. What we're starting with here is most of you are going to have your ribs flared out and your pelvis tilted forward. We're going to try to line up the rib cage and the pelvis, and this is what creates the cylinder. There has to be a lid and a base, okay? So we're going to start by actively using your core muscles to push your lower back flat to the ground, and you should feel your hips kind of tuck or roll underneath. From here, you should be able to feel that your ribs are flat, okay? And if you can't do that consciously right now, don't worry. We're going to make it happen, okay? So we're starting here, and all I want you to do is think about the pressure in your core cranking up ever so slightly enough to get your feet to peel off the ground just enough to get a credit card underneath there. And your goal is to maintain contact with the floor and your lower back, okay? So Jess, let's go ahead and try this. Watch out. Go ahead and relax first. There, you see how her rib cage flares up. This is important. I'm going to kind of show this. Yeah, this is an exaggerated thing here, but this is what most people start with. Now, she's going to pull those ribs down and get that lower back flat. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay, from here, she's going to maintain that contact with the floor, and she's going to slowly start to add demand. Notice the pressurization right around the belt, the waistline. Good. Now the feet will peel off the ground. Excellent. Notice the cylindrical shape of her torso. Excellent. Go ahead and relax, Jess. Beautiful. Okay. That's what we're trying to create. So everyone, let's try this. Okay. We're going to start on the ground. Okay. Jess will follow through here. Okay. Starting on the ground, just be completely relaxed. Feel yourself pull those ribs down toward the floor and toward the pelvis. Lower back should maintain contact with the floor. From here, slowly, try not to use your leg muscles here. We're trying to use that lower abdominal wall to create pressure enough for the heels to peel right off the floor and hover. Now, see if you can breathe. Okay, this might be challenging, okay? But this is supporting your breath right here. Excellent, go ahead and relax. Beautiful. All right, so that's exercise number one. Very basic, very challenging if you're doing it right.
Yep. So we are giving this one to you guys first on purpose. It's really hard, and we are giving this hard one to you right off the bat because we want you to feel what this on-off is, this engagement, right? I'm just sitting here relaxed like a limp rag, and now I'm going 100% because there should be a lot of you, frankly, who do this one exercise and think, oh my God, I've never felt that in my life while I'm singing. That's the point that we're trying to make here, right? That yes, there are moments in singing in certain tessituras or certain roles where you're not going to be that engaged all the time, but we want you to feel like what is happening when you have to be functioning at 100%, and this is a great exercise for that. So let's pause just for a second because I want to address something before we go on that a lot of people, a lot of teachers sort of get uncomfortable about, which is doing ab workouts or doing crunches and that kind of thing. And so I want to take the time to address this because it is a little bit sticky. So what we're doing here is we're creating stability or support, right? Or balance or a solid structure, right? We're creating that in the abdominal cylinder. We're not moving the abdominal cylinder like this guy doing a little crunch here. So Phil, would you like to elaborate this a little bit for us?
Yeah, again, stability, support is stability, right? And stability is about a solid foundation with which to move or sing or perform around, right? We need that base of support. It's kind of like that swing set, right? The kids can't be dynamically swinging, supported by the swings without the solid structure needed to support that. So, and again, sport specific applications here are important. In singing, much like the weightlifter on the right hand side there, in singing, there's not a lot of need for movement in the spine, right? Like this crunch, right? The spine moves back and forward, and that's fine for building muscle and stuff like that. That's fine. We're talking about singing and breath support. Okay. Now, movement, excessive movement in the spine forward and back, I'm sure you all know, is not conducive to singing. At least not well, right? We need to support. We need to build a foundation with which we can move, control, like Jess was saying earlier, control the amount of air. It's a very intricate thing that singers do, right? It's an art form, but it's also very much a sport. And that's kind of how I see it, right? Because that's my world. I work in the world of sport, and it's very much a sport, but it's also an art form. There's a lot of intricacies. And so with needing that kind of dexterity, you must have support. So little to no movement in the spine is ideal for maximum stability and support, right? And just like Jess said earlier, right, there's varying degrees of how much activity, how much intensity you need, right? That's the ebbs and flows of singing, right? There's this intense, not so intense, but we still have to have that base of support. So little to no movement in the spine. Crunches are not going to be advantageous to building support, right? We're going to do other exercises that will be far more applicable to what you need to support your own breath and your voice.
Right. So I think we can all agree that we're not here to just like turn you into gym beefcakes. I mean, that's great, but it needs to have a function, right? It needs to have a purpose. And we also know that there is a threshold of strength that you have to have in order to achieve an action, right? If you're picking up an orange, you still need some kind of strength. You can't just be a limp noodle, So we're not necessarily encouraging you to like go sign up for a weightlifting class or something like that if you don't want to. What we're showing you is that these exercises put a demand on your body in a way that is the exact same demand that happens during breath support. And that's why we're using these as a tool to guide us into this. So we're going to do another one now. Now we're going to start to learn some variance with this, right? We learned some off-on. We learned like what it feels like at 100%, right? So now we're going to go through and we're going to show you the nuances, right? Because even if you're going to go out and sing an entire Wagner opera, you really don't want to sing the whole thing at 100% because you're going to be toast by the end.